1 second.
Okay.
Okay, this is Women Painters West demonstration meeting on April 10th, 2025. And today we have Iva Gueorguieva. Did I say that correctly?
It's Eva.
Okay, sorry. And here's Annie to do a proper introduction. And anybody else, would they please mute while we're watching the demonstration? Thank you.
So thank you, Eva, for coming tonight. I have known Eva I think a few years ago, because she was doing a performance at Transformative Art. It's with Jill Moniz. And but I didn't see her at that time. And last time I was at Wanzima looking for a great artist, and hopefully Alaya told me, the exhibition director of Wanzima, told me, oh, ask Iva. And so I asked Iva, and she said, yes, okay. And there she is. She's a great artist, but she's better than myself to say what she does. Thank you, Eva. No, it's Eva, yes.
Thank you for inviting me, Annie, and it's a pleasure. I mean, when I met you at Wanzima and you said something, women something, blah, 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 I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Sounds great. So well, just a couple of things. I'm zooming from my studio in downtown LA. I've been in the same space for 20 years. I grew up in Bulgaria, which is Eastern Europe, and my family immigrated here in 1990 during the collapse of communism. And I lived in Baltimore. I studied philosophy. I then moved to Philadelphia, where I got my MFA. And then I promptly moved to New Orleans because since my childhood, it was my favorite city on the continent. And after about 3 years of painting there, teaching at Tulane and Louisiana State University, I decided to move to Los Angeles because I missed mountains. So I've been here ever since. So I moved here in 2005. And yeah, my life is painting. I spend every day in my studio unless I have to go teach. I resent housework. I have a almost 17-year-old son, and I like him quite a bit. And I have lots of dogs and a garden. So I'm always busy. And all of this ends up in my studio. So the way that you can see, there's a giant painting back here. I've been calling these paintings the field paintings. I work on the floor exclusively, but also on this sort of makeshift table. It's actually a painting on panel that serves as my table. And I go back and forth between working on paper. I make hundreds of drawings, but they're not studies. They're just another kind of surface that captures my activity. And then I work on muslin. So here on the floor, I'm working on this enormous painting that will actually, if I finish it, and it will be shown at Wanzima in May. I also have a group of painters. There are 5 painters that we like to get drinks, talk about painting. It all was born out of that need to, to communicate with other painters. So I'm glad you guys have your group, and mine is very small. And but we're doing a group show at Wanzimar in May. And then I also have an upcoming exhibition at Derek Eller Gallery in New York. But I work with I mean, I love that, you know, painters tend to really get into materials. And I thought maybe I would just start there. I work with watercolor, various kinds of, you know, pencils. I love browsing the art supply store and picking random tools that I've never used before. And then that always becomes a catalyst for a different kind of activity, because it's this marriage between, you know, this processing of experience, memory, thoughts, and then the way my hand um, elaborates or traverses the terrain of the material. So whatever is in my hand really changes the outcome. And that's something that is really become very important to me. So the method is not like a specific procedure, but rather this constant engagement with different surfaces, different materials, because then the recording reveals both my mark or my intention or my, you know, kind of the images as they float in and out, but also the expression is a collaboration with the material. So,
By the way, I have your slideshow ready to go. Anytime you're wanting to go into that, just let me know.
okay, well, maybe we can start with like the first one,
Okay.
just so people can see a little bit
Let
better.
me share screen. We had we decided in our tech checkout that this was the best way to do it, and was to for me to show the PDF. So
So this is a large painting. Can you guys still see me, or just the big picture?
yeah, I'll pin you there. I think you're pinned.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
we
you're
can
pinned to
see
the
it's
top.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, this painting, it started as just a giant pile of canvas on my table. And I love the fact that there was so much canvas that really felt like this mountain with all these crevices, and I was drawing inside of the crevices with Conte and charcoal. And then, you know, the next day I opened up this terrain, and so all of the markings with the pencil were in response to the physical terrain of the canvas. So I never fixed them or changed them. The painting kind of emerged out of what was already there, plus then bringing some of these different grays and blacks and whites. And then the collage with the gauze, which is this more figurative kind of aspect to the painting. Can you go to the next one, Jenny? This painting, it's also, you know, very big, started on the floor, and I was using a lot of, you know, dry brushes, but also gauze to rub the color and pick up information from just the unevenness of the floor. It's like basic frottage kind of, you know, technique. So I like to play around with almost like, what are other ways I can make a painting without using a brush? And deploying almost half misunderstood printmaking techniques, or, you know, like kind of more children's art. So not giving such emphasis or such it's like, as much as I love de Kooning and, you know, how much like all of his work came out of his relationship with his brushes, you know, like mine is almost like, well, he did that. How about I do the opposite? Which is like, how do I make paintings without brushes? So a lot of the drawing is rubbing, a lot of the drawing is using, you know, the cords of gauze to draw with. A lot of it is using kind of various ways of scratching the material. But so all these paintings that I'm sharing with you guys are very recent. These are basically from this fall and since the fires and during the fires. So there's there's moments where it all feels, if you can go to the next one, Jenny. So this is a painting that is much denser than the ones that I, you know, showed you. And this painting started with me wearing plastic bags on my hands, on my feet and my hands, and walking around the whole canvas. So a lot of these sort of track marks. This was it's called Field 1 or Field 2. And I would say this is the kind of the first painting that came into being after my pilgrimage to Spain last summer, which was incredibly important. I went to Spain to see Picasso, see Miro, and see Antonita Pié in their land. I had this feeling that everything I understood was a misunderstanding because I had never been to Spain. So seeing Miro in New York is not the same thing as seeing Miro in Barcelona. And my suspicion was completely confirmed. I had like one revelation after the next. And to be in Barcelona and then to go to Madrid and to go up the coast and see the villages, the village where Miro worked, to touch the earth and to see the facades of these ancient cities, and to kind of come to understand that, wow, it's all already in the world. You don't really have to invent that much. If you're paying attention, it's all in the world. And then my journey got, you know, even more profoundly wild when I drove from Barcelona all the way to the Basque Country in the north in order to see the Cantabrian caves. And there, I was able to actually see with my own eyes, you know, these 40,000 and 80,000 year old cave paintings, which completely blew my mind. So this painting, I think, had to do with this. Okay, you know, I've gathered all these experiences. I've had so many of these revelations. I came to understand something really profound about the cave paintings and the way that those images really had to do with a kind of reaching, not possessing, not owning, but reaching, like a human hand reaching and finding the images in the surface of the rock. And it's somehow that kind of fortified my sense that even in my own paintings, the images are actually in the canvas. I just have to kind of find them, you know, or bring them into being. So it's not so I feel like as a young painter, I always thought of like, okay, what's the intention? What are you going to do? What does it mean? And so on and so, like this kind of burden, right? And I've really changed my mind about all kinds of things. Can we go to the next one? So this is a really strange painting. I was in my studio and I was showing my niece, who was 7 years old. This was back in late January. Now showing her around the studio, and she looked at this painting. She's like, "Oh, Eva, I think your paintings knew what was going to happen." And it was really kind of strange to see this painting through her eyes and how she saw, the colors, the forms in this painting, and how she, really felt like, oh, the paintings, this painting like kind of strangely foretold, what was about to happen. And I do think that there is ways in which painting has this kind of capacity, I think, to connect us to the past and to the future, through the present and through the moment of making, that sort of softens those kind of temporal boundaries. Because I think paintings allow us to be hypersensitive and maybe tuned into, I don't know, information that's available to us that supersedes or maybe even exceeds our kind of cognitive, conscious, intentional minds. So painting for me is, continuously a kind of process of revelation, of discovery, and a way of being alive. And I'm pretty into it. So if you want to go to the next one, maybe kind of scroll down. I want to get to the kind of unstretched paintings towards the end. So these are on canvas.
Just tell me when to stop.
Yeah, just keep going.
Actually, I'll make them a little smaller so that we can kind of see them in their entirety as they go
Okay.
by
Sure.
a little bit better.
Okay. So these are the vertical paintings, maybe just hold on for 1 second. So as I was working on the giant horizontals, I was also really interested in these very body scale, almost like doors. I kept having these kind of, like paintings as doors, not windows, but doors, like something that you can move in and out, like with your whole body. And so these are 76 by 51 inches, and they're all the same size. And the way I work on them is I call them stacks because they're unstretched. I have, a pile of these, the same size canvas, and I can just kind of flop them around almost like laundry and work on them from both sides and one on top of the other. And something interesting happens, I think, when I deal with these sort of stacks, because they share certain, almost like they share certain like DNA, it's like siblings or something. And then the next stack gives me permission to like, reverse the process or go like in a completely different, with a completely different attitude. But you can keep going. Maybe pause for this one first, just quickly. Also, I've been really interested in how the colored gauze, when dry, can allow me to almost create these more sculptural forms that then I press. And so the overlap of the semi-transparent gauze creates these different tonal variations in the color. And that's really interesting to me because there's something X-ray-like to the image, especially in the form of the kind of blue, dog or whatever creature in some kind of ecstatic posture. You can go to the next one. Keep going. So these are now, this one is part of the animal series.
Yeah, just tell me when to stop. I'll scroll
Yeah,
every
you can keep going.
5 or 6 seconds.
You can keep going. You can keep going. Keep go. This is a painting. Yeah, this painting. This is a painting called "Seated Women," and I often have these sort of recurrent. I grew up with my parents had studied in Kiev in their 20s. My mom was in medical school, and they had met a Russian artist who did a portrait of my mother in pastel. And it was a portrait of her while pregnant with me, but she didn't know it. And it's a beautiful painting that my parents still have. And I don't know, I grew up looking at it because, you know, there's something about like the images that you grow up with, like they leave a mark. And there was something about this particular portrait of my mother, and was the curve of sort of her posture, but also something about her expression that was so mysterious to me, and still is, because her expression is truly impenetrable. You really cannot tell what she's thinking, what she's feeling. There's this like incredible, intense separation between the interior space of, you know, the figure, and then the sort of physical manifestations, you know, of the, you know, the body in space, and, you know, I mean, whatever, the color and all of that. And so I was always fascinated, and I feel like every 5 to 10 years I make a painting that's called Seated Woman, and it's this, again, like a kind of return to that specific portrait of my mom. You can keep going. So now so this next one, this is, I also make these double-sided paintings that are muslin and gauze, and they are meant to hang in physical space. And I'm really interested in them. They're all 120 inches tall and about 80 inches wide, which is kind of my arm span. And they're these kind of almost oversized figures to me. So these are the paintings that initially it was just a rejection of the stretcher bar as a kind of burden that compelled me to become involved with these. I call them tapestry paintings as a way to reference a kind of nomadic, you know, soft painting. These are assemblages. They're, you know, they look very fragile, but actually they're very tough. And something about their physicality compelled me to start collaborating with some dancers, especially towards the end of the pandemic, and to create these environments and also opportunities for people to physically interact with the paintings. So there's you know, cords of gauze that people, you know, a dancer can grab and, you know, literally operate the painting or twist the painting or change its shape and so on. So the last performance I did was with a painter, with a dancer named Gretchen Ackerman. And I've taken these paintings to Elysian Park. I've taken them to the top of, you know, the Angeles Crest Mountains. I've done performances inside and outside. If you guys are interested, you can go to, I have a blog where you can watch actually some of these performances. I did a very large scale performance at Night Gallery last summer that involved 4 dancers. So if you can move to the next one, Jenny. So that's the same painting, but now kind of pushed against the wall. And it's really interesting what the wall does, you know, and how it sort of flattens something that is, you know, actually rather dimensional when it's in the middle of the space. So it's interesting to me to play with these paintings and see them outside against the wall in the middle of space. And they because they tower so much over my physical body, it's really interesting to work on them on the floor, but then when I suspend them from the ceiling, you know, how that kind of verticality extends beyond my, you know, height. So like what I can reach, what I cannot reach. It's very interesting to me, like this constant back and forth between the horizontal orientation and the vertical orientation. Because I think, you know, for the most part, we inhabit the world as vertical beings, but when we sleep, we're obviously horizontal. And I think it's interesting to kind of play with that orientation in space in relationship to the body. So can we just move one more down? Well, maybe two more, a few more. This is a painting that will be on view in New York, but you guys are on the West Coast, so never mind. And then the next one. And next one. So this is the newest large scale tapestry painting, and it's called Book. And it has two panels that sort of open almost like a book. And it's been a very interesting kind of evolution of my work. So I just finished an interview with a painter, Donna Nelson, that will be available on Bomb Magazine, with Bomb Magazine in June, that focuses on this particular painting. So I'm excited to share that at some point with you guys. But I always prefer to respond to questions. So I think I've talked enough and I've showed you some. And so perhaps if we can open it up for some questions.
Okay, I would like to start by commenting this. Do you see faces and animals in your paintings? Do you tend to put them there? Do you not see them? How does that work for you?
Oh yeah, there's lots of those.
Intentional or unintentional?
It's there. It's interesting. Like I think that, well, my animals are a big part of my life, and they're also these kind of, you know, they're canaries in the mine, they're avatars, they're self-portraits, they're portraits of other people, but they're also themselves. And there's something about, you know, animal forms that is very freeing to, first of all, I love drawing them. This is a studio shot. I love drawing them, and especially my dog Zoe. She's been kind of present throughout my paintings for the past 2 years, and then I finally found her in real life. So in my
Wow.
gallery, it was weird because I kept having this kind of dog horse creature in all these paintings that I worked on for 2 years or 3 years for my night gallery show, which was last June. And then in August, I met this dog, and it was her. It was her. It was like the dog from the paintings, but now she's really all like everywhere. And there's, I think, the faces, the references to animals, I call those like moments of intimacy, because it's almost like a little gift to the viewer where, you know, it's these little bits of recognizable things that I think it opens up, you know, the conversation in a way. It's like, oh, it's a dog, it's a horse, it's, you know, it's like there's a kind of immediate, you know, surrender. Or
Yes. I think it was the third painting that you showed us, the one that you said that you had painted in response to the trip to Spain, including the viewing of the the paintings. I'm like, I wonder if she knows how many animals I see in that cave painting.
Well, so like for example, this one, there's definitely it's I would say the most like kind of intentionally almost like icon like, you know, and it's like the way that that sort of face of the kind of dog horse is painted. But yeah, I've always been very interested in like the tension between figuration and abstraction. And I've never bought the distinction at all as it in any way real. Because, you know, I grew up in Bulgaria where there was, you know, contemporary painting at the time was super boring, was horrible, like kind of social realism stuff, and I was completely not interested in it. But I love like all the paintings in the, you know, the churches, like the icons, and all the, you know, wall paintings. And then in Bulgaria was a really interesting thing because my exposure to abstraction was really through textiles, because in textiles, and I went to an art school and I was a textiles major, but my teachers were these really awesome women who made abstract paintings because you were allowed to do that using fibers. So I was exposed to, like, it's almost like I learned about Cubism and Russian constructivism and all of, you know, this history of abstraction and Kandinsky and so on and so forth, but through the angle of weaving or, you know, fiber arts, because there, you know, it was possible to explore abstraction under the kind of conditions, you know.
Yeah.
So
Anyone else have any questions? I'm going to go to grid view there so we can all see each other. Whoops. I'm going to stop the share for right now. There we go.
Just what is your blog? Where is it? Can you write it on the chat?
oh, okay. I can. I will even do it like so. Okay. Chat. Okay. Can I do it? Yes.
Just type.
May I say something?
Yes.
I think they're so raw and so elegant at the same time. So it's like a really interesting combination of those two qualities, and I think they're great. They're really beautiful.
Oh,
There
thank you.
was some in there that I particularly liked as well.
Yeah,
there was one
that-
called something, a name and then devotion. That was one
Oh,
that
yeah.
spoke to me. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
Nancy-
that's a giant painting. It's like 110 inches.
Yeah, that what Nancy was talking about, that tension that is created by the rawness and the elegance of it it's you know, it's mesmerizing. And that the last one that was on the all dark one that had so much texture in it, I was really drawn to that one.
Good, good.
I was wondering if the painting behind you, it looks sort of black gray. It's over that way. No, the other way. The other way. The other one. That's right in the corner.
Right in the corner, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering if it's what the texture is, if it's rope on there or
Yeah, I'll move my computer closer. Don't get dizzy. It's yeah, there's texture. It's gauze. And some of it actually like even, you know, protrudes in space. And then this one is, I've worked on this for like years, and it's layers and layers and layers.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one I love
Yeah,
too.
that's the one I
Yes,
was
loving
curious
that
about.
one.
Me too.
It almost looks
The
like
texture is
there's
amazing.
like
Yeah.
rope that's
Yes.
looped down at the bottom.
Are those
Yes, it
owls at the
is.
bottom? They look like owls to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're like
that-
these. So this painting's called it's a portrait of Onoda. I don't know if you guys have read the book. It's Vernon Herzog's book where he wrote. Well, he kind of tells the story of Onoda, who was this Japanese soldier who remained and continued to fight the war for 35 years on a coast on an island of the coast of the I think somewhere in the Philippines.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I was
Onoda
just reading
it's
about that.
oh, it's so incredible.
It
But
is.
you know, what
Mm.
struck me about that book was, so I've been working on this portrait of Onoda for 3 years now. And
Wow.
and I feel like, I mean, and there were so many iterations. There was like an iteration of Onoda was like much more of like a kind of a character or a figure, you know, relationship to background. And it just like I kept like struggling and I finally, so anyways, those kind of heads down at the bottom, you know, because he was not alone. Like when you first start reading the book, you think, oh, it's one person, but no, it was a whole group. And he was the one who remained convinced that the war was ongoing. And what struck me was that it wasn't like he didn't even believe the voice of his own brother that the war was over. What broke his conviction was the utter innocence of the young Japanese guy who had like set out to go find him. Because this kid was like so strangely unaware, you know, that it broke his conviction, that innocence. And I just was, anyways, I was a bit obsessed with Onoda. But also like the Herzog's descriptions of the meticulous ways in which he, for 35 years, he mended that same uniform. And he kept his samurai sword perfectly oiled and perfectly in perfect shape. And there's something about that, you know, that kind of care.
Fiction.
Yes, yeah. The care,
Vigilance.
but then also the horrors of the fact that, you know, yeah, the war has never ended. Like, you know, I grew up with the fact that like the Second World War ended, but no, it just keeps going. So anyways,
Great
it's a
book.
really important painting for me, this black gauze painting.
When you say gauze, do you get rolls of it at a fabric store, art store? How porous is it? I mean, I'm not sure what.
Gauze is basically cheesecloth, yeah.
And where do you find huge amounts of cheesecloth, or do you just get the small things and stick them?
You can get them, and I mean, the Amazon has them, but I also, you know, love going to like I mean, whatever fabric stores and getting like whole bundles of it. Yeah. So yeah, it's
And
I
food
like
food supply stores too, because it's basically cheesecloth.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then they have different kinds of grades of it.
Right.
But what I love about cheesecloth is that it's semi-transparent, so it feel like it works like a scrim.
Right.
As I said, I'm always trying to like, you know, not paint with a brush.
Do you use any kind of fixative on all of these that you use charcoal and pencil and?
I am very, I don't like to learn new things. So I do everything with matte medium.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. But I love Utrecht's matte medium because it's the perfect glue. It's the perfect medium. It's not too thin. It's not too thick. And that's what I use. Yeah. And you can glue anything with it. And it's archival and it's the same as my paint. You know, it's easy.
What about fixing all your charcoal and
Well,
stuff?
I don't fix it. It's I use the matte medium on top, so it kind of like, you know, this is where you kind of, I really play with, um, So different charcoals and different charcoal pencils, some of them have already some wax in them. So then it doesn't get so smeary when I use the matte medium on top. And then depending on the canvas and what I'm drawing on. So it's all like, there's no one answer, it's more,
Okay.
yeah, but it's all matte medium and I don't know how to spray things. That
Thank
sounds too complicated.
Joan, did you have your hand up at one point, or was there somebody else who's been waiting patiently to ask a question? Lucy, you're muted.
Uh-oh, now she's frozen.
There you go. No, let me see if I can unmute her.
Oh,
Oh.
the book is called
No, you can
it's
only mute.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
Let's see, ask to unmute.
There we go. Can you hear
There we
me?
go, Lucy. Sorry.
Yeah. Eva, I seem to remember earlier paintings, and I love these, but I seem to remember earlier works by you where color and even geometric forms were really important. I'm wondering what the process was that got you here.
Oh, well, it's I'm trying to it's called let me just put this in the chat. Twilight something is the book. I forget. To answer your question, so yes, you're right. Up until 2018, my paintings were much more, I would say, lots of color, lots of almost like a cubist space, kind of heroic, very complicated. And honestly, I think it had to do with letting go of the stretcher bar and starting to make the tapestry paintings. And it was a kind of crisis, I would say, that I went through in 2018. And then during the pandemic, I destroyed 30 of those paintings by covering them with gesso and gray paint. And that turned into the Pompeii gray paintings. And it was something about that, like taking all that labor and all that value, and those things were worth money, and I just was like, fuck it. Something about that was really liberating. And
Interesting.
it brought me to this whole other attitude, relationship. Now I feel like free to paint until, I'm no longer on this planet. And prior to that, I felt a bit like, boy, I cannot make another painting that looks like my paintings. If I do, I better go to dental school or something.
Glad you didn't. Although you might have made a great dentist. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe. I know a lot about dentistry. My grandmother was a dentist. I spent a lot of time in dentist. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Twilight of the World. Thank you, whoever corrected me. The Twilight of the World. I always remember just the word Twilight.
Yeah. Joan, you have your hand up.
I wanted to know, when you're using color, is it acrylic or what kind of?
Acrylic.
Okay, thank you.
But in my drawings, I use watercolor.
Right.
Yeah. And acrylic. I like watercolor. I also use like watercolor pencils, and I just got this funny little material that it's called Inktense.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah. They're discontinuing apparently, and so I just bought like a bunch of it very cheap because they're gonna stop making it. But it's you can draw and on canvas and on paper, and then use matte medium and, you know, water, and, you know, it's really interesting kind of drawing / paint material. And sometimes I also use oil sticks, but rarely.
You start a painting, do you have an intent, or is it just more design and then you see where it goes?
I call them, I waste a lot of time. And
Not a waste, you're conceptualizing.
yeah, thank you.
Using,
Thank you.
mulling.
But, you know, I have these like sketchbooks, and you know, I draw in them, I write in them. I even started writing weird little poems lately. And, you know, I look around, I do a lot of exercise in the studio. And then at some point, you know, I start, but it's always, each painting starts in a different way. Like I was describing that first painting, I don't know what compelled me to just take out this huge piece of canvas, like bunch it up on my table and start drawing inside of the crevices, right? But I'm not gonna make another one like that, because like I have to be compelled, you know. With the one that's on the floor right now, it started because I had made this kind of form there, and then I was just really interested in the kind of the shape of that body that seemed to be like a body, but not really. It's like the legs are too short, but it feels like maybe a crouching figure or something. And I just really wanted to like get various imprints of it, like through different means, like whether it's laying the muslin on top and, you know, with wet brush, like running the brush along and picking up. So this whole terrain is filled with kind of ghostly, you know, rubbings of that body, of that figure. So each painting starts in a very different way. So it's not, honestly, like, I think I've tried I keep trying to find ways to subvert, you know, 1, ideas, 2, intentions, 3, just like, oh, let's see what happens. So it's like that mixture of, like, it needs to be like, there needs to be this like urgency on the one hand, but that urgency doesn't have a goal set out, you know, but it's more like, okay, well, that urgency has to do with some kind of set of procedures that I'm interested in seeing kind of what they produce. But it's not so relaxed as to like, oh, I'm gonna do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And because that's when you start to apply, you know, notions of design, notions of good and bad, notions of beauty, and I'm completely not interested in any of those categories. It's
So
almost like,
almost like you kind of know vaguely where you want to do, but you have no clue how you're going to get there.
yes, and but somehow it's like climbing, like when you set out to climb a mountain. I love, there's a documentary called the Alpinist, and I keep thinking that one of these days I'm going to do a lecture that's just about that documentary. But it's this kid who climbs mountains, but he climbs by himself, you know, so he's renowned in that free climber community because he has done unthinkable things. But most of those guys like have sponsors, they have somebody photographing them, blah, blah, blah. But this kid just does it on his own and in complete solitude. And he has achieved things that nobody else has ever been able to achieve. But at one point, the documentary, you know, he's in Patagonia and he's about to scale this really impossible peak. And he's not looking at other people's maps. He's not looking at other people's experience. He's just spending like 3 weeks watching that mountain. Watching and watching, playing with the kids in the little village, hanging out, eating well, sleeping well, but just watching and watching and watching. And then at some point he just starts going. And in the going, he says something like, well, of course there's fear. There's always fear, but like the fear comes and then you ask yourself, well, what am I going to do? And the only answer is I'm going to keep going. And there's something really interesting about that. I feel like that's kind of, I mean, I would kind of wish I was a mountain climber, not just like a dumb painter. But it's a similar kind of thing.
I guess one has psychological fear and the other one has physical fear.
Yeah, maybe that's the overlap. But I have certain, like I would say there's certain kind of parameters to how I'm thinking about things or how I'm practicing thinking, that has to do with this, like on the one hand, radical openness, and the other hand, like, intense attention. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not really an answer, but
No,
doing my best.
It did answer a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And any other questions for Iva? Any last words, Iva?
Well, it's lovely to meet you guys, and it's really nice to like peek into everybody's home and see all the stuff that you
Activity in
guys
some
are
cases.
making. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a wonderful talk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.